Go.
This is Pete Feenstra on Thursday the 28th of June 2013, remarkably talking to Wayne Kramer for the MC5, true guitar legend. Absolutely brilliant to have you here, Wayne.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Happy to be anywhere?
Happy to be anywhere. Yes. Particularly happy to be here in London and getting ready to. I did a recording session last night with the great Wilco Johnson.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Oh, that's great.
Absolutely fantastic.
You like rhythm guitarists too, so he fits the bill.
And
Oh,
going to play a club Friday night with the Good, the Bad.
Yeah.
Great
Danish band.
experimental band, and then play the Glastonbury Festival.
Yeah.
On Saturday.
With them as well?
No, this is solo.
Oh, really? Okay, well, we're doing this for GetReadyToRock.com, so let's talk about that Glastonbury date.
Sure.
What kind of stuff are you going to be playing?
Be playing kind of a selection of tunes from some MC5 stuff and some my solo stuff and some other songs that I've learned over the years I like.
Okay, let's start at the beginning. What's it like being a revolutionary in a corporate world? It's a big question.
Good answer.
Yeah,
Well, nowadays a social activist, I should say.
what's it like? Well, it's the pay is not so bad, but the rewards are spectacular.
Yeah. And we'll come to that. Hopefully talk about your charity and everything else, which would be fantastic. But meanwhile, second question with that is, what's it like being the godfather of counterculture, that some people have told you? Of course, I should say.
I don't know. I've been called a lot of things. I try not to think about the things that I've been called.
Do you think
I had a role to play in some stuff, sure. Yeah.
You absolutely do. And I think the great thing that comes out of you being here today and generally is the fact that you are still a social activist after all these years.
Well, you can't keep them down on the farm once they've seen the lights of Gay Paris.
Oh, that's a good answer, yeah. Do you think the other guys in the band that have sadly passed, would they have still been doing the same stuff that you're doing now? Would they have carried through that political thing that was part of the MC5?
It's hard to say because, later on in life, I read interviews with the singer of the MC5, and he refuted a lot of the ideas that we shared in the early days, and that always, I always wondered about that, and that was so long ago. I mean, we were boys then, and I think one's ideas evolve with time. And
but you've been very consistent in your output or your efforts.
well, it doesn't feel consistent, but if it looks consistent,
Well, you've matured. You've matured your political outlook. Let's put it that way.
And I remain committed to fundamental ethical principles.
Which is a great thing. Sure. Do you think that artistic freedom and originality is still possible in contemporary music?
I think they're always possible. They're just difficult. It's hard. It's something hard to do. To do something honestly and to do work with meaning.
Within the structures that you have to work with.
In the Hollywood system or the, whatever the record business is today. I'm not sure what it is.
I don't think anybody really knows, but at least there's still some good music coming out in pockets.
There will always be, because there will always be, people that want to do something. That want to do something of value. That has some worth to it besides fame. Career goals.
And going back to what you were just saying about Rob there, I mean, would you say that once John Sinclair was jailed with the band, and then you were taken on by John Landau, I believe, did the kind of, let's call it revolutionary fervour, did that kind of subside? Was that put on the back burner for the band? Did you go more on a kind of a musical trip?
No, but I think what happened was attempting to establish some credibility.
Yeah.
You know, we were attacked by our colleagues on the left. You know,
Oh yeah, as they always
as
are,
revolutions always
yeah,
go,
yeah,
they
yeah.
turn on, they eat
Oh,
themselves.
right.
You know,
Yeah.
about you know, not being revolutionary enough for the revolution, and I think we were trying to at least my goal was to try to expand the influence of the band and the reach of the band beyond that narrow, limited ideological stripe, and say, you know, what we're doing is talking about something larger, and to be able to talk about it with some authority,
Which you
know,
do.
some credibility.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're trying to do.
Well, you've got a legacy that brings us to this very day, of course. It's something that presumably you're here to talk about and keep alive and pass on to a new generation, I guess.
Well, yeah, I guess. I don't know. You know, you try to. I think my real challenge is my cynicism
It is?
and my apathy.
I don't believe
Those
it.
are the things that I have to
Fine.
muscle up against.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy to be critical.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, critical theory requires that you offer a better solution.
Yeah.
It's not enough just to say, well, that sucks.
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
That sucks. Why does it suck? And what are you doing about
That's
it?
it, yeah. Going back to the band's recording career, of course, your first album, strange in those days, was a live album. Hell of a live album, Kick Out the Jams. Did you struggle after that to kind of to bring that high energy, all the feedback, all the performance into the studio? Was that a problem?
It was
For
a
the
challenge.
band?
It was a challenge, yeah, because the band really wasn't prepared for the rigors of the recording process. You know, all we worked on was performing live.
Yeah.
And you know, the process of making records is a skill you have
itself.
to acquire.
Yeah.
And most bands learn over their first few albums.
Or to get a producer to help them do it? Yeah.
And we kind of approach things from an unorthodox perspective by making the first album live. I think it was partially because the record company realized that it was going to cost them a fortune to try and record this band in the studio. It would be much cheaper to do it live.
Yeah, but they should have got a producer probably that could have handled it, looking back.
But see, nobody could handle it.
Right, okay,
The MC5
okay.
was unmanageable.
Right, okay, got it. Right.
We were unproducible.
Well, in your teens, I think it was in your teens, you and Fred Sonic Smith were both guitar players, both different bands and then together. At what point did you cross over from music to politics? Essentially.
Yeah, I think it was a point in time where we took what we felt on a gut level.
Yeah.
You know, that something
Things
isn't
that were going
right.
on, yeah.
This is not, you know, this sucks. You know, our neighborhood sucks. The government sucks. Our parents suck. That gut level feeling, and we're able to translate that. And see a connection between people all over the world that were saying the same thing.
Yeah.
And then the forces behind that feeling were actually accessible. That you could actually put your finger on it and say, it's a government policy that makes this suck. You know, the idea that there's a war going on, an undeclared war in a foreign country that's never threatened the United States, but they're asking me and my friends to go fight and die in this war. They weren't asking; they were telling.
They were telling, yeah.
Nowadays they ask, and but still, you can put your finger on the policy. So it was a matter of kind of an education, a politicization, and you know, you experience things in the street with the police, for example. You know, and it polarizes you. You start to see things differently, and things start to fall into a kind of perspective where you can understand things on what we would term political level. You know, it's really just having a larger analysis of the world around you.
Were you aware of people like Frank Zappa at the time?
Oh, sure.
Who was writing pretty much about the same sort of
Yeah,
situation?
because after a while you're looking for it.
Yeah.
And you start to hear other voices
souls, yeah.
that are telling the truth. And that's what we're all trying to do. We're trying to tell the truth about how we feel about truth and how we see the world around us.
And do you find a sense of irony that all these years later, well, going to back then, of course, there was also a divide, a generational divide, big generational divide between the kids and older people, essentially. And nowadays, the music generation, or if you can call it a generation, the music fans are a lot older. It's the other way around now, in fact.
Well, there's always a generational divide. The new generation is always going to find their own voice, their own sound. Today, they love Skrillex, and so do I.
Yeah. What would have happened to the MC5 if they had become successful, like some of the punk bands did years later that were influenced by you?
I'd probably be dead too. Because if I had had unlimited funds with my, untreated alcoholism and drug addiction, I probably would have killed myself. You can't speculate. I'd like to think that we would live in a different landscape if Albert Eiler hadn't died young, if John Coltrane hadn't died young, had the MC5 been able to convert to becoming a huge American rock band, maybe we could have changed the landscape of music and we'd be enjoying a more dynamic and
but it's an ideal, because after all, a lot of the great jazz men like that and the ones who are still around end up just playing in clubs. There's nothing wrong with that, but they don't. It's very difficult for them to break out, particularly now.
Because those artists weren't there, something else emerged. And I personally call it, the curse of Miles Davis. I love Miles, but Miles understood that he could reach more people playing for a Grateful Dead audience than he could playing at the Village Vanguard 5 sets a night.
That's my point.
So he influenced a whole new generation of musicians, and unfortunately we ended up with smooth jazz.
Yeah, we certainly did. So going back to the music, were you and Fred Smith influenced by Mike Bloomfield and Elvin Bishop, the two-guitar thing?
Not really.
Right, okay. No. Just a parallel, they just happened to be playing the same sort of things. Yeah. So where did
they were more blues purists.
They were, yeah.
I mean, we played the blues, we all played the blues, but they studied the blues forms, and we were more rock kids. My influences had more to do with Jeff Beck than they did with B.B. King.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. So where did the freeform element, the jazz freeform element, come from in the band? Was that from you?
Well, a lot of it came from Rob Tyner and John Sinclair.
Really?
Sinclair was older than us and been around a little bit longer and was a huge advocate for the free jazz movement. So I used to go over to his house and listen to his records, take acid and listen to Sun Ra, and I started to hear it. I started to say, this is the direction that I want to take rock music in.
Yeah. Well, you certainly did. Sun Ra kind of was beyond everybody.
That's only because they don't listen to him. If they listen to him, they find that it's not inaccessible. This music is all accessible.
How do you respond to somebody came up with a quote and said if you'd have taken out the revolutionary kind of fervour and the politics out of the band, that you'd end up being Grand Funk Railroad?
The difference is that Grand Funk didn't do anything that was musically revolutionary. It was all orthodox music.
Much like punk when you think about it.
Yeah.
On the album,
they're outside of the sheer enthusiasm level of punk. There's nothing revolutionary.
When you were at your height and you were playing to those big crowds in Detroit, was it hard to break out of there when you went touring? How did you find touring at the time, going to other cities?
In the early days, we found that audiences were they were very polarized.
Right.
It was either you were totally in love with what we were doing and you became committed, a believer, or you weren't. And generally people, you know, like you're very popular in New York, Chicago, but when we went to the West Coast, the hippies, they didn't hear it.
Didn't get it.
They didn't get it.
So did you ever hook up with the, make contact with the Grateful Dead?
Yeah.
No, not at all. So which begs the question, was it a Detroit thing originally?
Well, yeah, I think it, you know, we came from a different place. You know, the West Coast bands, a lot of those guys were folk musicians.
Yeah.
They bought electric
A
guitars.
bit more mellowed out generally.
And you know, we were aggressive urban
Yeah,
kids that grew up with electric guitars. We didn't start playing Peter, Paul, and Mary and,
certainly
and then
didn't.
bought a Stratocaster. You know, we started with Chuck Berry.
On back in the USA, how did you end up having Tutti Frutti as the lead track? That seemed like a lame choice.
Well, because we love Little Richard and we played his music from the beginning of playing music.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong with Little Richard.
So what bring people up to speed now and talk about your charity. Do you want to tell everybody what it's called?
We have a non-profit independent initiative called Jail Guitar Doors. We are the partner of Jail Guitar Doors UK, founded by Billy Bragg in this country. Billy, my wife Margaret, and I founded Jail Guitar Doors USA almost 5 years ago now. And what we do is find people that work in corrections who are willing to use music as a form of rehabilitation.
Yeah.
We provide them with guitars, and we run songwriting workshop programs in prisons. We do occasional in-prison concert performances, and we work for political and legislative change.
Wow. And you do some gigs on the back of that as well, I believe.
We do.
Well, I don't just believe, I know, because when you got to San Francisco, this is the celebrated show where you had Sammy Hagar and a whole bunch of people turned out there for you.
You know,
Joe Satriani.
we're musician-founded and musician-operated. You know, it's all of the musicians on the outside that care about those guys on the inside, those men and women, and are willing to put their money where their mouth is and send a message that they know that these guys serving time want to do better. They don't want to be in prison. They want to change for the better. They want to come out, rejoin their friends and family. They want to pay their price, and then they want to come back. And we want them to come back. And we want them to come back with an understanding of how they got there and what they can do to make sure they never have to go back to these places again.
And so you literally go in there with a bunch of instruments, with a mission goal in your mind. And what do you do then when you get there? I mean, is the whole program worked out?
The instruments are not gifts.
No.
We don't gift them the instruments. The instruments are a challenge.
Right.
And if you accept the instruments, then you accept the challenge to use these as tools to change yourself for the better. You know, the great political theorist Theodore Adorno said, every song written is an uncommitted crime. See, art is anger management.
That's a good one.
If you can sit down with your guitar and write a song about something that's pissing you off, it's way better than going out in the street and thumping somebody.
And I think you said somewhere along the line that it's their escape route. Absolutely. For a couple of hours or whatever.
It was for me when I was in prison. When I was in prison and played music, I wasn't in prison anymore. I was in the world of music.
Do you find any resistance because you are a musician to actually trying to develop these programs?
Of course. There's resistance from prison officials who have taken it upon themselves to be punishers, to be the extension of state retribution. And you know, you're not sent to prison to be punished. You're sent to prison as punishment. And I also understand people's eye for revenge. If you're the victim of someone you love, I understand that, and they have every right to want revenge and retribution, but that's a personal and subjective feeling. That's not policy.
No.
Policy has to reflect mercy. We say that our justice system is tempered
Something
with mercy.
progressive,
Yes.
with an end in sight.
And what we do in America with the sentences that we deliver, they are the most severe sentences in the history of the world, and that is not
And
justice.
there's a whole bunch of people in there as well.
2.5 million.
Yeah.
We lock up more people in America than
We've got to wrap this up in 2 minutes. I just got to ask a couple of things. Whatever happened to the MC5 DVD you were bringing out? Or somebody else was bringing out a testimonial CD, a DVD.
Yeah, the movie, yeah. You know, we resolved our difficulties with them about 6 years ago.
Okay.
So we, you know, I don't know the answer to that.
And finally, you've done a world tour with a reconstituted MC5. How did you approach that with different personnel and thinking about what you were playing and thinking about it now rather than 40 years ago?
I wanted to stay true to the spirit of the band. You know, what does the band represent? Well, the band represents possibilities. That there's always a new possibility. There's a possibility of a different kind of music, a different kind of way to see the world, and
Different way of living.
yeah. And so if I could populate the band with other musicians, and you know, always have new people,
Different guests.
cycling in and out, then we'll keep it fresh and keep it true to the
Can
spirit.
we tell everybody about some of the guests that have appeared on that tour?
Well, we've had people like William Duvall, the great singer from currently in Alice in Chains. We've had Marshall Crenshaw, Handsome Dick Manitoba, Mark Arden, Lisa Kokala.
Tom Morello, I guess.
Tom's been on the band. Gilby Clarke, great Guns N'
Which
Roses.
just about says it all. It's a whole community out there rooting for you.
Yeah.
It's been Pete Feenstra talking to Wayne Kramer. It's been an absolute pleasure. Stu Day on the camera. Thank you very much and good afternoon.